Hello, my name is Kayla Jimenez and this is my comparative biology project. Today I will be comparing the reproduction systems and organs between the earthworm, crawfish, and sea star. The purpose of the reproduction system is to produce offspring through either asexual or asexual process. Now first we have the earthworms, which are part of the phylum Annelida. They reproduce sexually and are hermaphrodites, which means they are both male and female. Because they are hermaphrodites, both worms will give each other sperm when they are mating. They have a sexual organ that is pointed out right here. And it is a swollen glandular band which secretes a cocoon which will hold the fertilized eggs until they are ready to hatch. Usually they are ready to hatch around 2 to 3 weeks. However, if the conditions are not right, then the eggs can be dormant until the conditions are right for them to hatch. They can be dormant anywhere past the 2 to 3 weeks up to years. Now the earthworm contrasts from the other organisms that we are looking at today because they are hermaphrodites. They are the only organisms that we are looking at today that are both male and female. They also have the shortest or longest time for their eggs to hatch because they can be, again, either 2 to 3 weeks, which is on the shorter side of the time it takes for eggs to hatch compared to what we're looking at today. And they could also be the longest because they can take up to years to hatch if the conditions are not right, which will cause them to be dormant. Next we have the crayfish, which are part of the phylum Arthropoda. They also sexually reproduce, and they have separate males and females. So the male will guide his sperm into the female, and that sperm will go and fertilize the eggs, which will be in the ovaries, which are pointed out right there. And when the eggs are developing, they will be transferred to underneath the tail of the crawfish, of the female crawfish. And they will stay under her tail until they are ready to hatch, which is usually around 4 to 6 weeks. Now the crawfish contrasts to the other organisms that we're looking at today because they are the only ones that will actually move their eggs from one place to another while holding on to them. The earthworms keep their eggs in one place, and we'll see later that the sea stars don't hold on to their eggs at all. The crawfish have an average hatching time compared to what we're looking at today. They are only a few weeks longer than the normal time of the earthworms, and the sea stars will hatch differently. We will see that later in the presentation. Now we have the sea stars, which are part of the phylum Echinodermata. Sea stars also sexually reproduce, but they sexually reproduced by broadcast spawning. Now there are both male and female sea stars, and these male or female sea stars will have sexual cells from the gonads that will become eggs and sperms, which will then be released out into the water, which is what broadcast spawning is. Now, once a sperm finds an egg in the water and fertilizes it, it then goes into a larval form, which acts as a phytoplankton, and they will swim around for a few weeks or even months until they decide to settle down as an adult. So the sea stars contrast from all the other organisms that we're looking at today because they release their eggs instead of holding on to them like the earthworms and the crawfish. And they can have the shortest time to hatch because as soon as the sperm finds the egg, it turns into its larval form. However, it's not guaranteed that a sperm is immediately going to find an egg. So I said can be the shortest time because once the sperm does find the egg, yes, it can be very short, but it may be quite a while until a sperm is able to find an egg to fertilize. So we contrasted, and now we're going to compare a little bit. So we saw that both earthworms and crawfish held on to their eggs. They held on to their eggs in different ways, yes, but they both held on to their eggs. Now the sea stars were the only ones that released their eggs. Now sea stars are part of the phylum Echinodermata, which is only comprised of marine organisms. And sea stars are marine organisms, so they have water surrounding them, which lets them do broadcast spawning, which is why they don't have to hold on to their eggs like the rest of the organisms. And while we saw that all of the reproduction processes were different. They all had different sexual organs and just processes of how they reproduced. However, all of the organisms that we looked at today did use sexual reproduction rather than asexual reproduction. Now this is my works cited. I used outside sources as well as the lab worksheets that we were given. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you.